Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Saya Najib Aroff dan ini adalah Niaga Awani dan bermula hari ini 1 September 2023. Niaga Awani akan bersiaran secara langsung untuk anda selama 1 jam 30 minit. Kami akan membawakan perkembangan demi perkembangan tentang ekonomi tempatan, antarabangsa, pasaran dan juga apakah isu yang mendasari permasalahan cabaran ekonomi semasa yang perlu anda berikan tumpuan, dan ini semua akan membantu anda membuat keputusan dalam kehidupan harian anda, sama ada termasuk dalam pelaburan individu di peringkat institusi keluarga maupun di peringkat yang anda lalui pada ketika ini sama ada pendidikan dan sebagainya. Itu yang kami rangkumkan sepanjang 1 jam 30 minit di Niaga Awani, dan pada hari ini kami memberikan tumpuan sudah pasti kepada sudut ekonomi, di mana sejak minggu lepas lagi pelbagai data ekonomi dibentangkan oleh DOSM iaitu Jabatan Perangkaan, dan pada pukul 11 pagi nanti insya-Allah kami akan membawakan juga secara langsung pembentangan New Industrial Master Plan yang akan dilancarkan oleh Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, dan kami akan membawakan perkembangan secara langsung dan juga analisis mendalam melihat kepada NIMP yang akan dilancarkan. Apakah ini mampu membawa Malaysia, khususnya industri kita, ke peringkat yang lebih maju, memodernkan industri tersebut, dan pada masa yang sama yang paling penting sekali iaitu menarik masuk pelaburan dan juga kekal berdaya tahan dan juga kompetitif di peringkat serantau. Itu yang kami akan berikan tumpuan sepanjang hari ini, dan memulakan Niaga Awani untuk jam ini sudah pasti kita memberikan tumpuan kepada aspek ekonomi. Data-data yang dikeluarkan DOSM sejak minggu lepas, saya membawakan pakar ekonomi MIDF Research Abdul Muiz Murahalim yang bersedia pada ketika ini. Assalamualaikum Muiz, terima kasih kerana bersama dengan kami pada pagi ini. Pertama sekali, saya nak melihat kepada data inflasi terlebih dahulu. Kalau kita melihat data inflasi yang dikeluarkan oleh DOSM Jumaat lepas sebenarnya menunjukkan harga CPI contohnya meningkat dengan lebih sederhana dalam bulan Julai, iaitu pada kadar 2% berbanding 2.4% pada bulan sebelumnya. Begitu juga jika kita lihat dengan pergerakan harga pengeluar PPI sendiri, data bulan Julai yang dikeluarkan hari Isnin yang lepas menunjukkan harga yang dibayar oleh pengeluar tempatan mencatatkan penurunan 6 bulan berturut-turut, iaitu sebanyak ataupun pada kadar deflasi sebanyak negatif 2.3% bagi bulan Julai. Mungkin adakah Muiz menjangkakan tekanan inflasi akan terus perlahan dan apa kesannya kepada perbelanjaan pengguna? Itu satu. Yang kedua, kalau kita lihat MIDF sebelum ini juga melihat ataupun firma-firma lain juga melihat separuh kedua ini akan sedikit mencabar untuk inflasi kita. Bagaimana Muiz?
Okey. Kalau kita lihat dari segi penyederhanaan ataupun betul peningkatan inflasi lebih sederhana ini adalah dalam jagaan, kerana kita dapati memang ianya berkait rapat dengan peningkatan harga makanan, termasuk juga barang bukan makanan yang mencatatkan peningkatan yang lebih perlahan. Berkait rapat dengan tindakan Bank Pusat untuk menaikkan atau mengetatkan dasar monetary, dan termasuk juga kita dapati sebenarnya terdapat penambahbaikan dari segi sudut penawaran ataupun supply condition. Yang mana mungkin ini menjelaskan kenapa kita lihat dari segi harga pengeluar ataupun kos pengeluaran telah menunjukkan penurunan sebanyak 6 bulan berturut-turut. Cuma saya kira di dalam negara kita dari segi kefahaman orang ramai mungkin kita perlu memberi penjelasan lebih, kerana inflasi yang rendah ini bukan bermakna harga menurun, tetapi kenaikan pada paras lebih perlahan. Mungkin kita dapati terdapat kebimbangan tentang kos hidup, dan sebab itu juga kami sebenarnya masih agak bimbang melihat kepada peningkatan harga makanan, kerana kita dapati kos barang makanan termasuk juga untuk feedstock iaitu untuk ternakan masih menunjukkan peningkatan. Tapi bagi saya apabila kita lihat inflasi lebih perlahan ini, kita menjangkakan terdapat kesan positif kerana kita masih dapati perbelanjaan runcit masih kekal positif, walaupun mungkin dari segi pertumbuhannya dilihat lebih perlahan berbanding bulan sebelumnya.
Muiz, bagaimana kita melihat kalau kita menyebut juga dan menyentuh tentang perbelanjaan pengguna sebagai contoh, kalau kita melihat data KDNK bagi suku kedua 2023, dia menunjukkan pertumbuhan yang lebih perlahan, iaitu perbelanjaan swasta sebagai contoh sebanyak 4.3%, lebih perlahan berbanding dengan pertumbuhan 5.9% pada suku sebelumnya. Adakah ini punca utama kepada pertumbuhan KDNK yang lebih rendah dari jangkaan, dan apa mungkin unjuran Muiz sendiri, MIDF sendiri mengenai KDNK keseluruhan? Adakah kita akan melihat pertumbuhan yang sederhana ataupun pertumbuhan yang sederhana ini akan berterusan dalam tempoh suku ketiga, suku keempat untuk tahun ini?
Melihat kepada trend indeks pelopor ataupun leading index, kita dapati mungkin pertumbuhan ataupun momentum yang lebih sederhana ini dijangkakan kekal pada suku ketiga dan suku keempat. Dan bila kita lihat dari segi pertumbuhan KDNK, walaupun sebelum ini kami jangka pertumbuhan yang lebih perlahan daripada 4%, namun data rasmi menunjukkan KDNK berkembang lebih rendah pada paras 2.9%. Ini adalah lebih rendah daripada jangkaan pasaran, dan antara punca utama seperti yang Najib nyatakan tadi, kita dapati pertumbuhan yang lebih perlahan dari segi perbelanjaan pengguna. Namun apa yang lebih jelas pada kami ialah kelembapan dari segi perdagangan barangan, kerana kejatuhan ekspor benar bagi barang dagangan barang-barang iaitu hampir 15% adalah lebih teruk daripada apa yang kami jangkaan awal kami. Dan saya jangka sekiranya kelembapan sektor luar ini berterusan, ini menjelaskan kenapa kita menjangkakan kelembapan ataupun pertumbuhan lebih sederhana mungkin akan berterusan bagi separuh kedua tahun ini.
Muiz, bagaimana pula kalau kita ataupun bacaan Muiz sendiri mengenai data yang dikeluarkan Rumusan pada Rabu yang menunjukkan sektor perkilangan mungkin hanya menggunakan kapasitinya sekitar 78.2% pada suku kedua 2023 berbanding dengan 79.8% pada suku sebelumnya. Dan saya kira ini mungkin adalah bacaan yang terendah dalam tempoh 5 suku kalau tidak silap saya. Itu sebanyak pada ketika itu, dan juga adakah kelemahan sektor perkilangan tersebut juga menjejaskan pertumbuhan ekonomi negara bergerak ke hadapan juga?
Ya, seperti yang saya nyatakan tadi, kelembapan perdagangan luar ini menjadi punca utama kepada kelemahan sektor perkilangan, bukan sahaja di Malaysia tetapi kita lihat ini adalah trend global. Kalau kita lihat dari segi pandangan ataupun data yang dikeluarkan oleh survey PMI, kita masih dapati sebenarnya aktiviti global manufacturing ataupun pembuatan di peringkat terbangsa ini masih dikira lemah kerana paras PMI itu berada pada bawah daripada bacaan 50, iaitu menunjukkan penguncupan aktiviti. Dan kita seperti saya katakan tadi, terdapat kebimbangan sekiranya kelembapan yang lebih teruk bagi sektor luar ini mungkin akan terus memberi kesan kepada aktiviti perkilangan. Namun bila kita lihat dari segi pandangan, terdapat juga satu data positif ataupun pandangan positif yang menyangka kitaran bagi pasaran E&E global dijangka akan mula memulih pada hujung tahun ini, dan sekiranya pemulihan ini berlaku pada suku keempat, kita mungkin boleh lihat kesan kelembapan permintaan luar ini adalah lebih rendah. Malah kalau kita lihat dari segi data-data PMI dan juga prestasi ekspor beberapa negara Asia Timur, kita dapati terdapat sedikit kestabilan kerana penurunan adalah lebih perlahan, dan jika tanda-tanda positif ini terus berlaku, kita mungkin kita boleh yakin yang keadaan permintaan akan lebih baik pada hujung tahun ini.
Kalau kita lihat ada wujud sedikit perbezaan antara pertumbuhan tahun ke tahun, year on year ini yang lebih perlahan pada 2.9%. Namun kalau kita lihat mungkin dari segi pertumbuhan suku ke suku ini, pertumbuhan KDNK negara adalah lebih memberangsangkan dengan peningkatan 1.5% mungkin pada suku kedua 2023. Lebih tinggi lah kalau kita lihat berbanding dengan suku pertama, iaitu lebih kurang kenaikan 0.9%. Bagaimana Muiz mungkin menterjemahkan perbezaan antara tahun ke tahun dan juga suku ke suku ini, dan adakah ini menjadi mungkin asas kenapa Muiz mungkin beranggapan sendiri bahawa pertumbuhan 4% masih boleh dicapai pada tahun ini?
Okey, kalau kita lihat dari segi pertumbuhan ni, kebiasaannya memang kita rujuk kepada pertumbuhan secara year on year ataupun tahun ke tahun. Dan bila kita lihat pertumbuhan 2.9% ini bukan sahaja lebih rendah daripada jangkaan pasaran, tetapi ini adalah paling perlahan dalam tempoh 7-10 tahun. Iaitu sejak kita melihat ekonomi negara mula memulih daripada lockdown penuh pada suku keempat tahun 2021. Tapi kita tidak boleh terlalu fokus pada year on year ini kerana kita perlu ingat yang terdapat kesan base effect ataupun kesan rujukan, kerana suku kedua tahun lalu ianya adalah peningkatan luar biasa apabila ekonomi negara dibuka secara sepenuhnya setelah diimpit oleh pandemik COVID-19 sejak dari tahun 2020. Dan oleh sebab itu bila kita lihat dari segi pertumbuhan kuarter on kuarter ataupun 10 tahun ke 10 tahun, memang ini adalah lebih baik. Malah peningkatan 1.5% yang lebih laju ini pada 10 kedua itu adalah disokong oleh peningkatan bukan saja daripada peningkatan aktiviti perbelanjaan, malah aktiviti pelaburan yang lebih baik. Dan sektor seperti pembinaan dan perkhidmatan juga turut mencatatkan pertumbuhan yang lebih kuat. Atas keyakinan ini, pertumbuhan domestik yang lebih baik ini kita jangka akan terus memberi sokongan kepada pertumbuhan ekonomi negara, dan kita yakin pertumbuhan 4% bagi tahun 2023 ini mampu dicapai oleh negara.
Okey, kalau kita melihat kepada ataupun kalau kita rangkumkan dua data makro ini, iaitu pergerakan inflasi yang lebih sederhana dan juga pertumbuhan KDNK negara yang lebih mungkin perlahan, adakah MUIS menjangkakan sebarang perubahan di peringkat bank negara dari segi menentukan OPR dan juga dasar monetary kita, kerana kalau kita melihat juga ini sudah pasti ada dipengaruhi di peringkat antarabangsa di Amerika Syarikat. Ini macam-macam cerita kita dengar daripada Jackson Hole dan juga sehinggalah kepada kedudukan The Fed pada ketika ini. Bagaimanakah semua ini boleh dirangkumkan dan akhirnya OPR kita ke mana hala tujunya boleh dijangkakan?
Bila kita sebut tentang keputusan dasar monetary yang dibuat oleh bank negara, tumpuan khusus diberikan kepada situasi dalam ekonomi negara, khususnya melihat pada pergerakan inflasi dan juga pertumbuhan ekonomi. Secara ringkas, saya menjangkakan OPR akan dikekalkan pada paras 3% hingga hujung tahun ini, kerana saya menjangkakan bank negara akan lebih memberi tumpuan kepada menyokong pertumbuhan ekonomi negara melihat kepada pertumbuhan KDNK yang lebih perlahan, dan juga mengambil kira keadaan inflasi yang sebenarnya adalah terkawal, kerana kita lihat situasi inflasi di Malaysia tidaklah teruk atau setinggi yang dialami oleh negara-negara lain.
Okey, Muiz, terima kasih kerana bersama kami pada pagi ini. Itu tadi pakar ekonomi MIDF Research Abdul Muiz Morhalim kerana membantu kami memahamkan kedudukan ekonomi semasa Malaysia. Bank Negara Malaysia BNM mengumumkan pelantikan Adnan Zailani Muhammad Zahid sebagai Timbalan Gubernur berkuat kuasa semalam, dan Bank Pusat itu dalam satu kenyataan pada Khamis berkata Menteri Kewangan Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim telah meluluskan pelantikan itu untuk tempoh 3 tahun.
Sebagai Timbalan Gubernur, Adnan Zailani akan bertanggungjawab menyelih sektor pasaran kewangan dan pembangunan. Beliau juga akan menjadi ahli lembaga pengarah bank dan terus menganggotai pelbagai jawatan kuasa bank, termasuk sebagai ahli jawatan kuasa pengurusan, jawatan kuasa dasar monetary, jawatan kuasa pengurusan rizab, jawatan kuasa pengurusan risiko kewangan, jawatan kuasa kestabilan kewangan dan jawatan kuasa dasar bersama. Adnan Zailani memulakan kerjaya beliau di BNM pada tahun 1994 dan merupakan pemegang ijazah sarjana dasar awam dari Blavatnik School of Government, University of Oxford. Beliau juga memiliki ijazah sarjana sains dalam bidang ekonomi pasaran global dan sarjana muda sains dalam bidang ekonomi dari London School of Economics and Political Science. Sepanjang tempoh kerjaya selama 29 tahun dengan BNM, Adnan Zailani terlibat dalam pelbagai bidang perbankan pusat yang merangkumi pelaburan dan pasaran kewangan, dasar pertukaran asing, kewangan Islam serta pembangunan sektor kewangan. Beliau kini merupakan pengerusi jawatan kuasa pasaran kewangan serta ahli jawatan kuasa eksekutif International Islamic Liquidity Management Corporation, Lembaga Pengarah Kumpulan Wang Amanah Persaraan dan Lembaga Pengarah International Centre for Education in Islamic Finance.
Menteri Pembangunan Kerajaan Tempatan Nga Koming baru-baru ini mengadakan lawatan rasmi 3 hari ke Singapura untuk meningkatkan kerjasama dua hala antara Malaysia dan negara jiran itu. Kementerian Pembangunan Kerajaan Tempatan KPKT dalam kenyataan pada Khamis maklumkan lawatan itu merupakan usaha berterusan bagi mengukuhkan hubungan erat sedia ada memandangkan Singapura merupakan negara jiran dan rakan penting bagi Malaysia.
Menurut kenyataan itu, interaksi yang tulus dan erat antara kepimpinan kedua-dua negara telah dapat menghasilkan kerjasama demi kepentingan bersama dan seterusnya memberi manfaat kepada rakyat kedua-dua negara. Hubungan mesra antara Malaysia dan Singapura juga memberi sumbangan kepada keamanan dan pembangunan rantau ini. Oleh itu, kedua-dua kerajaan dan masyarakat sivil perlu memperkukuhkan kerjasama dan bersama-sama membentuk masa depan. Lawatan rasmi berkenaan turut disertai Ketua Pengarah Jabatan Perumahan Negara Datuk Jayaselan K. Navaratnam dan Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Perbadanan Prima Malaysia Datuk Seri Muhammad Nazri Mat Sharif. Nga dalam lawatan rasmi berkenaan turut melawat pelbagai projek berlandaskan strategi utama kementerian termasuk flat Lembaga Perumahan dan Pembangunan Singapura HDB, projek pembangunan semula bandar, fasiliti pengurusan sisa pepejal, projek pemuliharaan bangunan warisan dan loji jana kuasa tenaga boleh diperbaharui. Beliau turut memenuhi jemputan ke mesyuarat bersama Menteri Luar Singapura, Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan dan Menteri Negara Kanan Kementerian Ehwal Luar dan Kementerian Pembangunan Negara SIM-AN. Nga dalam kenyataan itu berkata, selain menjadi rakan dagang dan pelaburan penting bagi Malaysia, kuasa beli yang kukuh dalam kalangan pelancong Singapura memainkan peranan penting dalam mendorong pertubuhan berterusan ekonomi Malaysia. Selain itu, Singapura telah mencapai kejayaan yang luar biasa dalam pembinaan perumahan awam, inisiatif hijau bandar, pembangunan semula bandar, penghasilan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, usaha anti rasuah dan lain-lain. Justru, pencapaian-pencapaian ini patut dicontohi dan memberikan peluang pembelajaran yang berharga bagi Malaysia.
Indeks pengurus pembelian PMI industri pembuatan China pada Ogos naik 0.4 mata peratusan berbanding Julai lalu iaitu peningkatan sebanyak 49.7%. Perkara itu dinyatakan dalam laporan Persekutuan Logistik dan Pembelian China CFLP dan Pusat Penyelidikan Sektor Perkhidmatan Biro Statistik Negara China pada Khamis.
Menurut laporan, terdapat 12 daripada 21 sektor menyaksikan peningkatan PMI sekaligus memberi petunjuk terhadap perkembangan sektor industri pembuatan di China. Pada masa sama, indeks pesanan baharu naik 0.7 mata peratusan berbanding bulan terdahulu dengan menokok 50.2%, manakala permintaan dalam sektor industri pembuatan kemudahan dan barang pengguna turut semakin meningkat. Naib Presiden CFLP Shaijin berkata peningkatan indeks PMI untuk 3 bulan berturut-turut itu menunjukkan bahawa prestasi ekonomi terus pulih dengan stabil, manakala indeks pesanan baharu yang kembali semula ke paras 50% ke atas pula menandakan momentum endogen semakin kuat dalam pertumbuhan ekonomi di negara ini. Memetik laporan itu, indeks pengeluaran perindustrian meningkat 1.7 mata peratusan berbanding bulan sebelumnya dengan mencatat 51.9% yang turut menyaksikan peningkatan yang ketara. Daripada perspektif unjuran pasaran perusahaan, indeks jangkaan aktiviti pengeluaran dan perniagaan pada bulan Ogos dijangka meningkat 0.5 mata peratusan berbanding bulan Julai dengan mencatat 55.6% yang berada pada paras 55% ke atas untuk 2 bulan berturut-turut.
Kita bertindak setika kembali selepas ini.
Wow, banyaknya notification. Dapat banyak soalan ni. I pilih lagi satu. Soalan ni dari Suna Najib. Dia tanya, macam mana nak dapat wifi kencang? Senang je. Kalau berminat, WhatsApp hi ke 0395433838. Lepas tu, pilih nombor 2. Nanti tim kencang jawab. Jangan lupa bagi tahu bajet dengan keperluan isi rumah dulu. Ada berapa pengguna, berapa peranti, itu penting kena tahu tu. Tapi jangan risau, router Wi-Fi 6 ni confirm kencang walaupun 10 orang guna serentak. Power kan? Ada soalan lain? Jangan malu-malu. Layari astro.com.my/fiber untuk info lanjut tentang pack dan promosi terkini.
Siapa tu, Mama?
Dia bawa anak kau ke alam roh.
Saiful? Saiful? Saiful?
Awak sakit otak ke apa?
Aku tak sakit. Saiful?
GYSME, sebuah produk Astro AWANI dalam memperkasakan perusahaan mikro, kecil dan sederhana PMKS akan meneruskan siri jelajah kedua di Johor Bahru berlangsung di Topen Shopping Centre Tebrau selama 2 hari. Bermula 2 September depan, siri jelajah ini bakal menyajikan hiburan dan juga reruai perkhidmatan para usahawan.
Menggabungkan sesi perkongsian daripada pakar-pakar industri dan bengkel ilmu. Antara pengisian ialah perkongsian kejayaan Ang's Popcorn, Bos Ijan dan MYK Deco Legacy. Kisah-kisah kejayaan mereka bakal dikongsikan bagi memberi semangat kepada para usahawan dan orang ramai. Turut berlangsung sesi bengkel bersama Unify Business, TikTok Shop dan InScan. Pengunjung turut disajikan dengan persembahan daripada basker tempatan iaitu Middle Groove dan Sri Irwana Tari selain berpeluang memenangi hadiah menarik melalui cabutan bertuah. Selepas Johor Bahru, jelajah GYSME akan meneruskan jelajahnya ke 3 lagi lokasi iaitu Kelantan pada 15 dan 16 September, Pulau Pinang pada 21 dan 22 Oktober dan Kuala Lumpur pada 24 hingga 26 November. Layari www.gyusme.com.my untuk maklumat lanjut.
Baik, sebut sahaja mengait, pastinya terbayang beberapa produk craft seperti cenderamata, hiasan sofa mahupun alas meja. Namun inovasi mengait yang dihasilkan berubah mengikut zaman. Di Johor misalnya, Cora Yi Crochet House mempelbagaikan produk hasil mengait dengan lebih 50 jenis item.
Faridah Tan Abdullah yang aktif dalam bidang itu berkata, dia mula menceburinya sejak berusia 15 tahun. Usahawan dari Batu Pahat itu akui mengait memerlukan minat, ilmu serta kesungguhan. Malah ramai wanita gemar dengan produk dari benang kait kerana hasil buatan tangan lebih menarik dan eksklusif. Menggunakan gabungan warna-warna yang menarik dengan pemilihan jenis benang kait yang sesuai menjadikan produk lebih istimewa. Farida berkata, tiada pembaziran dalam penghasilan produk mengait kerana jika tersilap, ia boleh dibuka dan dibetulkan.
Mula-mula saya kait beg. Saya tengok kawan saya kait beg tingkatan 3 masa tu. Lepas tu saya pun kait dah beg sekali. Bila tengok orang guna, orang dah mula order kan. Kita pun dah mula produk beg sikit-sikit lah. Lepas tu sampailah sekarang kita masih buat beg lagi. Lepas tu dah tambah-tambah sikit barang, macam kalau boleh kita nak benda mengait ni, boleh orang guna macam getah rambut, botol air, sarung botol air, topi, beg yang boleh guna. Kita tak nak macam bila you beli balik just simpan, tak boleh guna kan. So kalau boleh kita nak bagi orang bila benda tu beli balik boleh guna. Kita tak nak macam beli simpan je tak boleh guna, tu yang sangat macam sayang kan. Itulah kita buat macam tu. Banyak juga lah, ada topi, kopiah, hairband baby, sarung botol air, beg, duit shilling, getah rambut, hair clip, alas cawan. Alas cawan tu macam orang boleh beli untuk macam hadiahkan gift, macam kenduri kahwin, macam sarung botol, semua boleh guna.
Selain menjual produk di kedai yang terletak di Bandar Batu Pahat serta pameran seluruh negeri, Koperasi Crochet House juga aktif menjalankan pemasaran secara dalam talian menggunakan platform media sosial seperti Facebook, Instagram dan TikTok. Bukan sahaja menjual, malah Farida juga aktif berkongsi ilmu tutorial menghasilkan produk dari benang kait. Katanya jenis benang kait memainkan peranan bagi penghasilan produk. Untuk pakaian seperti baju, topi dan kopiah, benang jenis milik cotton digunakan kerana lebih lembut, selesa dan tidak gatal pada kulit.
Ada memang membantu sangat macam Facebook, sekarang Facebook, TikTok paling ramai orang guna. Lepas tu Instagram, dia minta kita buat macam tu, macam ni, dia akan bagi pattern, corak apa dia nak, insyaAllah kita boleh cuba buatkan.
Custom kat sini.
Ya betul. Dia bagi tahu kita dah macam ni, warna macam ni, kita mixkan atau kita buatkan untuk dia. Kalau dia okey, kita terus buatkan lah. Teruskanlah kita mengait, kita jangan putus asa. Teruskan, jangan tengok macam craft tangan ni macam tak ada untung. Sebenarnya ada untung, kita kena sabar.
Berpengalaman 25 tahun dalam bidang mengait, Faridah mampu mengait 3 produk dalam tempoh 1 jam bergantung kepada jenis item. Kesemua produknya dijual pada harga serendah RM8 hingga mencecah RM220 untuk item seperti beg dan baju kanak-kanak. Kesemua produknya dijual pada harga serendah RM8 hingga mencecah RM220 untuk item seperti beg dan baju kanak-kanak.
Menu sarapan Timur Tengah roti kacang pul sebelum ini hanya terkenal di selatan tanah air, terutama di Johor, namun ia kini semakin popular di kawasan utara selepas diberi nafas baru. Menu set kacang poi utara hasil sentuhan Husni Hashim kini mempunyai peminatnya tersendiri sehingga warungnya di Paya Keladi Kepala Batas Pulau Pinang menjadi tumpuan pengunjung, terutamanya pada hujung minggu dan cuti umum.
Usahawan berusia 56 tahun ini berkata, idea menu kacang poi utara diperoleh dari arwah bapanya yang menuntut ilmu di Mekah sebelum diberi sentuhan baru menggunakan kreativiti sendiri. Walaupun sambutan agak perlahan ketika baru beroperasi 7 tahun lalu, namun hasil promosi secara intensif dalam media sosial, menu tersebut kini menjadi kegemaran bukan sahaja di kalangan orang utara, bahkan menarik pengunjung dari selatan tanah air.
Yang pertama sekali, kita punya menu utama sini memang menu Timur Tengah. Jadi nak memperkenalkan menu baru kepada masyarakat tempatan ni memang susah lah. Okay? Tapi media sosial memberikan peranan yang agak penting lah dalam nak memperkenalkan ni. And then bila dah lihat sambutan yang agak okey, baru saya berani buka restoran lah, kafe ni. Dan kita punya menu di sini memang saya buat lain daripada yang lain. Okay? Kalau kita tengok kacang poi ni memang popularnya di Johor. Okay. Tapi kita yang versi utara ni, sebab tu saya letak nama kacang poi utara. Okay.
Selain set kacang poi utara, 2 lagi menu hasil kreativiti Husni ialah roti telok menghabu dan roti telok menghabu dandut yang tidak terdapat di tempat lain.
Bila kita pasarkan through media sosial ni, saya nampak penerimaan orang tu cepat dan juga begitu juga dengan pemahaman. Okay. dengan gambar, dengan cerita-cerita dan cepat. Okey. Dalam masa saya buat dalam masa 7 tahun ni, saya rasa tak, daripada seluruh Malaysia lah, saya boleh katakan pelanggan saya daripada seluruh Malaysia. Yang datang berkursus di sini, yang datang bercuti balik kampung. Memang sesuatu yang agak istimewa lah, saya boleh katakan, makanan Timur Tengah. Dan jarang orang kita yang menceburkan diri dalam menyediakan makanan Timur Tengah ni. Okey. Sebenarnya resepi ni dibawa oleh Aroff, bapa saya sendirilah, yang lama mengaji di Memperkasa sana. So kita olahkan balik, ya. Isteri saya olahkan balik menu ni, kita buat ikut selera tempatan. Jadi orang tempatan boleh terima menu ni, walaupun menu Timur Tengah.
Selain menu istimewa, pengunjung juga boleh menikmati hidangan dalam suasana santai kerana dikelilingi landskap yang cantik dan bersih.
UMNO menggesa Jabatan Peguam Negara mengkaji semula semua pertuduhan yang dikenakan
agar Datuk Seri Najib benar-benar diberikan keadilan.
Namun ia tidak bermakna bahawa parti itu melawan agama Islam.
Pendirian tidak bersetuju dalam pelaksanaan hukum hudud tidak bermakna melawan agama Islam, seperti mana yang turut disuarakan oleh Dr. Mahathir.
Penjawat awam cenderung untuk menyokong Perikatan Nasional, seolah-olah masih terperangkap dalam zaman pentadbiran Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin.
Lawan selebriti menyahut cabaran si Wira Merah.
That's it, I really cannot anymore.
Kecekalan dan ketabahan jadi taruhan.
Are you ready?
Yes!
Muntah, saya nak surrender.
Mampukah mereka meneruskan perjuangan? Real Men Malaysia, Wira Merah di Astro Ria dan Astro Go.
Wow, jangan mencarut di depan pam. Tadi Sani sudah call saya jerit-jerit, sekarang dia hantar masa lah. Apa hal?
Meja saya biasa banjir lah.
Tumpah kopi orang, belas je.
Polis Ibu 3. Sewa dan stream on demand atau sila ke saluran 480.
The Health Ministry hopes to shift its approach to drug addicts by prioritizing treatment and rehabilitation over enforcement and imprisonment.
The distribution of government aids to the people cannot be made under the name or logo of political parties.
A Malaysia Airlines flight departing Sydney for Kuala Lumpur was forced to turn around mid-air following an emergency incident.
SPM 2023 examination will take place from December 5th to March 7th next year.
Good morning. My name is Ibrahim Sani. This is a beautiful Friday, 1st September, 9:38 a.m. Taking over from my colleague Najib Aroff. Shortly, another colleague of mine, Tehmina, Kaoosji, she's going to be presenting an hour-long showcase in terms of what happened last week, what's going to happen next week under Niaga Spotlight. But for now, let's take a look into the local bourse because currently the FBM KLCI is at 1,455 points. It is up 3 points. There's a lot of sluggish trading today, largely because it is still, of course, a bump day in between a very long holiday. So we're not expecting a lot of traders to come in for today. Having said that, the trade as at 9:39 a.m. is about 863 million shares done, valued at about 500 million ringgit, with buyers and losers and gainers at about about the same at 288 in green, while 304 in red. Also, I want to focus a little bit more in terms of the ringgit because the ringgit did end higher against the US dollar today as investors remain cautious while analyzing a slew of economic data coming in from the US. We'll take a look into the international news very shortly, but for now, at the recent change, we're looking at 463 464 ringgit to $1 against the greenback, from a 464 to 467 at last few days' close. Now, if you look at the trajectory of the ringgit, you can see that right after the administration, the unity government took over, the ringgit strengthened to around 4.7 to about 4.3, 4.2. But it has since returned back to that 4.64 level over the past few months, especially throughout this year. This is critical for us to understand why. Because investor confidence did strengthen coming back from a new government, from the new unity government taking over, taking oath, Datuk Sri Ibrahim, the new cabinet sworn in. But like it or not, this support can't be maintained over the long term. That's why, if you look at the forecast of the conversation, we're looking at the ringgit continuing to strengthen over the next few months. And if you look at the trajectory that where we were at 2020, 2021, 2022, we're hovering at around 4.2, 4.4, but the trajectory has always been on the upward trend. So do expect a lot of weakness in terms of the ringgit against the dollar particularly, but against major currencies as well. Now, over my other show at Notepad with Ibrahim Sani, I did speak to a lot of analysts, not currency analysts, but economic analysts, including the chief economist of Maybank and, of course, the chief economist of RHB and CIMB as well, along with any other, the CEOs of CGS, CIMB, as well as Philip, talking about the direction of the economy when it comes to the investor support coming in, especially foreign investors, and most importantly, where the ringgit is going to move. They're all in consensus that the ringgit is going to continue to weaken over the next few months. So if you plan to travel abroad, you might want to spend that hard-earned ringgit domestically. Now, we have to go and talk about the Petronas's earnings that was shown last, I think it was yesterday. Petronas posted a 29% drop in PAT, or the profit after tax, for its second quarter of this year, to 16.4 billion ringgit from 23 billion ringgit in the corresponding quarter a year ago. Now, even though the PAT dropped 29% or about 30%. We're looking at the company still being able to post at 16 billion ringgit. That's still a lot of money, considering that it is still the only Malaysian company in Fortune 500. Now, this is because the average realized prices for all crude products fell amid lower crude prices, which are down 26% year on year. Quarterly revenue shrank 13% to 80 billion ringgit from 92 billion ringgit, which, according to Tengku Taufik, the Group CEO of Petronas, it was due to the lower average realized prices for all products, particularly offset by improved sales volume, mainly from petroleum and petrochemical products, and favourable forex impact. The Petronas CFO, Liza Mustafa, told the press on Wednesday that the company's performance was in line with other oil and gas majors, which in recent quarters saw weaker earnings compared to the bumper year in last year, tracking the normalization of the crude oil prices, which brings about that whole idea of where we want to be in the next few years when it comes to drawing energy. Very recently, the NREC Minister, Nik Nazmi, he is also the Climate Change Minister, did not rule out nuclear as a source of power for the country. And the moment he says that, there's a lot of naysayers saying that, oh boy, now we're going to look at Chernobyl, now we're going to look at Fukushima. But the concept of nuclear is still that this is still the cleanest source of energy. That's one. Now, very recently last week, the administration of this Anwar Ibrahim's government introduced the Energy Transition Master Plan, and within it, they're looking at a lot of movement from being a fossil fuel kind of reliant of a country to using renewables energy and trying to use hydrogen, for instance, and try to see where hydrogen can be further expounded on. Currently, the conversation is in Sarawak, for instance, but the larger perspective here is to try to reduce the nation's reliance on oil and gas. A step in the right direction, but it does need a lot of foreign money. We're looking at where these foreign money are coming in. Based on the conversation that we've had, we're looking at over 1 trillion ringgit over the next 10 years that needs to be spent. So very recently, TNB did say that they're going to spend 90 billion ringgit. The question is, over the next 4 years or 5 years, and while that's a lot of money as is, but it's not nearly the 1 trillion ringgit that is needed to actually move us away from fossil fuel. Now, let's take a look into some of the data coming in from the business confidence indicator that came in 2 days ago. The business confidence indicator turned positive to 0.7% in the third quarter of this year from negative 3.1% for the second quarter of this year. Another news is that DNB, for instance, is expected to finalize the equity holdings in the company by 31st December. So we do expect some news either today or early next week when it comes to DNB on the equity holdings. And of course, TNB, as I mentioned, 90 billion ringgit over the next 6 years for its grid infrastructure upgrade. Some corporate news. IRECA Corp enters a JV with ENH Energy to supply LNG or buyers across Malaysia. IRECA, of course, is currently trading this morning. Let's take a look. IRECA is down 1 cent to 49 cent. Meanwhile, MST Golf is going to expand its golf business into Indonesia. If you are an avid golfer, unlike me, MSF, some of the warrants are actually quite well traded, but I guess it's unchanged this morning. All right, let's now look at some news from the US. The US job openings dropped to its lowest levels in nearly 2 to 2.5 years in July as the labour market gradually slows. This bolsters expectations that the Fed will keep interest rates unchanged next month. The labour market conditions remain tight, with 1.5 job openings for every unemployed person in July, and layoffs remain very low by historical standards. Meanwhile, other economic data coming in from the US is that home prices in the US climbed for a 5th month as buyers competed for deals in least affordable market for decades. The national gauge of prices rose 0.7% in June from May on a year-over-year basis, and home prices nationally were flat. Now, before we move on to other markets, especially China that I want to focus on, In the US, if you look at the kind of trading that is currently happening there, one thing that is interesting is that some of the big companies, mostly tech, are still traded quite flat. Microsoft, for instance, is down about 1/3 of a point. Google is up 1/3 of a point. Nvidia is up about 1 point. And the rest is all there in terms of where you expect the trading is going to be. So yes, while the market is actually quite actively trading, and they don't celebrate Merdeka at 31st August, so it's currently 31st August in the morning of the PT time, maybe even mountain time. We're looking at the market opening in the next maybe 6 hours. We're going to see this trading happening. But one thing that I want to focus on is, of course, Apple, because they have just announced the date for the launch of the iPhone 15. Having said that, Apple is currently up only at 0.12%. So as you can see, the only company that is kind of in the tech sector that is kind of attracting great interest and great valuation is none other than Amazon, and unfortunately, a company that I have to mention, Tesla. So these two companies are still driving the kind of direction and interest from investors, especially from the tech sector. So look at this kind of map and you can understand that the trading that is currently happening in the US, while the numbers are still kind of sluggish, there's still a lot of trade coming in there, despite the economic data coming from the US and perhaps some notion that the Fed might maintain interest rates at that level. Okay, in other news, we're looking at China, for instance. The largest banks there are preparing to cut interest rates on existing mortgages and deposits. The latest state-directed measures to shore up growth in the world's second largest economy. And of course, announcement coming in that big state-owned lenders are reducing rates on the majority of the nation's 38.6 trillion yuan, or about 25 trillion ringgit on outstanding mortgages. Now, this may come as soon as Tuesday next week. So do keep an eye out when it comes to China economic data, because the reductions will only affect home loans on first homes, not the subsequent homes. This is going to be a big impact because Evergrande, a big company in China, has announced that they're going to file for Chapter 11, and the question now is what will be the repercussions on the other markets in the Chinese market when it comes to home loan companies. So big news there. And of course, with this, there is also that subsequent idea of PRC citizens might go aggressively in terms of buying properties overseas. So do expect PRC folks to come over to Malaysia even to buy properties here. Okay, China threatened on Tuesday to take Japan threatened on Tuesday to take China to the WTO to seek a reversal of Beijing's ban on all of its seafood imports after the release of treated radioactive water from the stricken Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The Prime Minister said that the government was gathering information on reports of movements to boycott Japanese products in China and would work with business leaders to address the situation. China also vowed to strengthen policy support and speed up government spending as the economy's recovery comes under strain. These comments were largely a repeat of Beijing's policy stance, with Zhang reiterating the government would beef up counter-cyclical measures and policy reserves and strengthen the coordination of various policies in the second half of this year. Pardon me. So, Japan wanting to sue China at the WTO. Meanwhile, China wants to strengthen policy support and speed up government spending. Two big themes coming in from China, especially when it comes to the backdrop of the PRC, for instance, or the party itself, trying to strengthen or bolster the improvements within the domestic policy. Now, over the Merdeka, I had a chat with a friend of mine who has just recently met the Taiwan Minister for Foreign Affairs, and the idea that is circulating in Taiwan right now is that they're looking for an ability for them to reduce the power of the Communist Party within China as a mitigating risk on how to reduce or lower the temperature of the Chinese postulation over Taiwan's sovereignty. So that is an angle that I feel that is quite interesting, because Taiwan is not going to go head-on with the Chinese government per se, but rather trying to see how they can actually improve on aggravating the Communist Party's standing and make it hugely unpopular within the Communist Party to increase the domestic tensions of Taiwan's sovereignty. Now, over the next few months, we're going to see a lot of Taiwan maneuvers in this regard. So do check that out as well when it comes to China and their domestic policy. Okay, still in East Asia, this is because South Korean labor unions are battling company managements to press an unusual demand. That is to raise the age of retirement to give workers a few more wage earning years before having to seek another job to supplement slim pensions. The issue fuels a contest for jobs between older workers among one of the world's fastest aging populations, with a rate of poverty among its elderly of 3 times the OECD average. The young workforce entrants are now also facing dwindling options. This, if you feel, has a lot of reverberations with the market that we are in right now in Malaysia, you're not wrong. This is because the government is also mulling to increase the pension age, especially in the private sector, to allow for the grey economy to, number one, be delayed slightly by a few years at least, and number two, try to ensure that the reduction of the usage of pension funds and EPF savings amongst elderly is actually reduced again by a few years. This is to mitigate a few things. The first is, of course, the number of Malaysians per capita when it comes to savings in EPF is actually 9,000 per head. 9,000 EPF members, yeah? Every single EPF member, you get the entire AUM of EPF and you divide it, you get 9,000 ringgit. That's not a lot when it comes to savings, pension savings. And especially if you expect to live 20 years post-retirement, well then that is certainly not enough. So the retirement crisis is happening in Malaysia. And of course, in South Korea, there are postulations and work that you can see just now, as I mentioned. So will we see the same in Malaysia as what we are seeing right now in South Korea? One more news before we move on to some market news. Australia has sent its first shipment of barley to China after Beijing scrapped tariffs this month, with the nation's trade minister confident that restrictions on other products will be removed as relations improve. Domestic tension and diplomatic tensions between Canberra and Beijing have improved, however, since the election of the centre-left Labour government last year in Australia. But Chinese tariffs on some of the nation's commodities still remain, including wine. Australia has taken the dispute over wine to the WTO against China. So as you can see, the WTO is actually quite an interesting factor here right now when it comes to how we can move towards getting China back in the world order. But I highly doubt that the WTO is going to be able to solve anything. Okay, the S&P 500 ended lower and the Nasdaq higher on Thursday after US inflation data matched estimates, underscoring expectations. The Fed could pause its monetary tightening while sales force, for instance, climbed following an upbeat forecast. The Nasdaq reached its highest in over 4 weeks after a Commerce Department report showed the Personal Consumption Expenditures or PCE price index, considered the central bank's preferred inflation gauge, climbed 3.3% in July this year on an annual basis, in line with expectations. This excludes volatility and volatile food and energy components. The core PCE price index rose 4.2% in July this year, year on year, also in line with estimates. Meanwhile, traders' expectations for a pause in rate hikes at the Fed's September 2023 policy meeting met unchanged at an 88.5% chance, while their bets on the central bank keeping rates unchanged in November this year stood at 51%, according to the CME's group's FedWatch tool. Investors are awaiting more comprehensive non-farm payrolls data that was announced, of course, for greater clarity on the Fed's likely monetary path. The yield on the 10-year Treasury notes eased 4.09%, lifting major growth stocks such as Amazon that I mentioned earlier at 2.38% as we speak right now. And of course, the S&P 500 declined 0.16% to end at 4,507 points. Nasdaq gained 0.11% to 14,034 points, while the Dow Jones declined 0.48% to 34,721 points. All three main indices posted losses for August this year, while the S&P 500 and Nasdaq logging their first monthly declines since February this year. It's a bit of a mouthful, I need a drink. US crude oil prices gained and its cycle more than $2 a barrel near the end of trade on Thursday yesterday, on expectations that production cuts by the Organisation Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OECD, or OPEC Plus, would continue throughout the end of this year. The US WTI futures for October this year settled at $84 a barrel, up $2 or 2.45%. Brent crude futures for October this year, expiring on Thursday yesterday, finished up $1 to 1.16%, up $87 a barrel. According to Andrew Lipo, the president of the Lipo Oil Associates, the crude market is reacting to OPEC production cuts being extended this year. And yesterday, 6-month US crude oil futures traded as low as $3.83, below crude for front month delivery, the steepest discount since November 17 last year, signaling tight supplies and encouraging inventory draws. Also yesterday, the US Energy Information Administration said that the US field production of crude oil rose 1.6% in June to 12.844 million barrels per day. This is the highest since February 2020, before the COVID-19 pandemic destroyed demand for fuel and other oil products. Meanwhile, the US expanded the restrictions of exports of sophisticated NVIDIA and advanced micro devices artificial intelligence chips beyond China to other regions, including some countries in the Middle East. NVIDIA, by the way, as I mentioned, is actually losing this morning. If I can find it. They are up 0.18%. So I guess there's some good news when it comes to trading for NVIDIA. Because NVIDIA said in a regulatory filing this week that the curbs affects what A100 and H100 chips designed to speed up machine learning and AI tasks that would not have an immediate material impact on its results. Rival received an informed letter. Rival AMD, also received an informed letter with similar restrictions, and adding that the move has no material impact on its revenue as well. So AMD is good as well. The US officials usually impose export controls for national security reasons, especially those including chips. A similar move announced last year signaled an escalation of the US crackdown on China's technological capabilities, but it was not immediately clear what risks were posed by exports to the Middle East. Normally the conversation revolves China, not the MENA region. Now, in a separate statement, NVIDIA said that the new licensing requirement does not have a meaningful portion of their revenue, and they are working with the US government to address this matter. Make that whatever you will. And finally, just to recap on that row with China on Tokyo's decision to release treated radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear plant that could shave off 0.2% Japan's real GDP estimates by Daiwa Institute of Research that showed yesterday. Japan started releasing treated radioactive water from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean yesterday, prompting China, Japan's biggest trade partner, to impose a blanket ban on Japanese seafood products. Japan's real GDP could shrink by around 1.2 trillion yen, or about $8.2 billion, or 0.2% of inbound tourism from China, if it does not recover, adding to the hit from the ban imposed by China and Hong Kong, as showed by the estimates. The row escalates and leads to a 20% drop in goods to China. This is export goods. Japan's GDP could shrink by around 6.1 trillion yen, or 1.1%, according to the same estimates. More than 700 Japanese companies exported about $600 million worth of aquatic products to China in 2022, making it the biggest market for Japanese exports, followed by Hong Kong, which announced its own ban on seafood products from 10 Japanese regions after the Fukushima release. I'm going for a break. When you come back, you're going to have Tehmina Kaoosji with Niaga Spotlight going on for 1 hour.
Walaupun angin bertiup kencang, Tak kira apapun hujan yang datang, aku tetap terus ke depan. Ingin menyusun, biar cantik. Hendak mengikat, biar kemas. Setiap insan mahu yang terbaik. Semangat membara panahan emas. Demi negaraku, selamat Hari Kebangsaan.
Di sini, persaingan tidak pernah padam.
This is huge.
Kini, Arsenal dan Manchester United kembali bersaing. Mengejar cita-cita, maruah jadi taruhan. Pertempuran penuh drama.
He scores it. It is game on here.
Arsenal menentang Manchester United secara langsung di Astro.
Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tehmina Kaoosji. We'll be running 30 minutes as usual today. Thanks so much to my colleagues Najib and Ibrahim Sani earlier. Now, Niaga Spotlight goes through the week in business and future affairs. Market watch, industries, analysis and insights, we've got you covered right here on Niaga Spotlight. Well, this week on analysis, we're covering scaling up women-led digital businesses. Now, the digital economy is booming. E-commerce sales worldwide, for example, grew 4% to an estimated $26.7 trillion in 2019, and this is according to the latest data. But not everyone is benefiting equally. Women across regions and continents still face many obstacles to start and grow digital businesses. This includes gender bias, lower participation in decision-making processes, and unequal access to funding and technology. So, with the necessary support and resources, women could add nearly 300 billion USD to e-commerce markets in Southeast Asia and Africa alone between 2025 and 2030. This is according to International Finance Corporation estimates. Noor Amy Ismail, Chief Operating Officer, Malaysia Venture Capital Berhad, MAVCAP, joins me online now to discuss scaling up women-led digital businesses. Good morning, Amy. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. I am in Jakarta now, talking about the same topic again with IFC. So I'll be speaking with them together with BCG and one of the largest venture capital in Indonesia, SC Ventures. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Amy, let's get the conversation started. Now, what is the current status of Malaysian women's progress in the digital economy sector, and what are some strategies to unlock further growth opportunities? So, of course, the entire Malaysian economy also benefits from this projected overall 300 billion, a staggering amount, which women-led e-commerce can achieve in 5 short years, 2030.
Yeah, I'm going to bring you back to first this very pressing data. So according to World Economic Forum, it will take about 132 years for us to totally close the gender gap. And sadly, that report mentioned that Malaysia in this gender bias report is actually at 103 out of 146 countries. Another interesting note, according to United Nations Women Gender Snapshot 2022, shaving women from the digital economy will result to 1.5 trillion losses by 2025, and we are currently at 1 trillion. I mean, look at the number, it sounds so ridiculous and for me personally unacceptable. So let's bring that numbers home. What happened to Malaysia? What are we doing about it? So I'm in venture capital industry. We are the largest venture capital in Malaysia, MAVCAP. So this is actually very interesting. There's actually 3 things that I would like to all of us to look at. First, in VC, in modal teroka, or it's in bahasa Melayu called modal teroka, only 1% funding went to a woman-founded company. I mean, 1%. For me, it's actually non-existent. And secondly, leaders in this VC industry only represented by 14%. So these two pressing numbers led to this, three issues. First, unconscious bias. I mean, do you think it's real? It is real. I mean, we are human, right? Unconscious bias. If we are lack of women leaders in VC, there's only 14%. The investors or people who are interviewing the new startups, unconscious bias is real. Regardless whatever we say, if you were to look at a Harvard Business Report, it's actually one of the pressing issues. And secondly, what, if I may say, from our observation or from our own data, imposter syndrome, women itself. By nature, we are perfectionists. So if you were to compare with the female founders, 60% by the time they're working on the report and stuff, that they will be going out there and start asking feedback and start asking for advice. But we women, we will keep the papers and we'll put it under the cupboard until we just like 120% and being all perfect. Then only we started going out. There's actually a loss of time for us there, right? Not being able to receive feedback. And thirdly, as I said again, underrepresentation. We need more women representatives out there to be in the VC industry and to champion all these women. Are we lack of any women founders? My answer is 50-50. Yes, we do have, but whether, again, VCs is a long-term game. By the end of the day, we look into merit for us to actually put in money for the next coming, because it's a long-term investment. We need to be ready, we need to be agile to accept all changes. So, for us in VC, yes, we will champion the DEI. Yes, we look into that, but as well as what we need is actually better representation in the VC industry. Yeah. And interestingly, Kaufman report, this is very interesting. Kaufman report says 63% of female-founded company give better result than a male counterpart, and 35% gives higher return. Positive, but our numbers in Malaysia is saying that only 1% female-funded company from the VC.
The numbers definitely say everything we need to know. Thanks so much for laying that landscape for us, Amy, and the fact that our female entrepreneurs definitely need to access the resources for capitalizing on e-commerce opportunities. Moving along from there, so deeper. So are there specific policies, Amy, in your opinion, that can address these socio-economic constraints which are hindering female digital entrepreneurship? In particular, equitable digital infrastructure. As of course, in Malaysia, we're not just the Klang Valley and KL Selangor. We're also looking at Sabah and Sarawak. We're looking at other states in the north as well, right?
Yeah, I think when you talk about diversity, equity and inclusion in Malaysia, people think it's just a buzzword. I think it has to be driven from the top. The government has to take this very seriously, and us being the hands and ears of the government has actually implemented a strong DEI policy in across our funds as well as our investees company, and mostly internally. That is something that we would love to champion, and we have been championing it. We have been working a lot with Lean in Malaysia, Kretela, to provide first knowledge-based how they go and pitch. We provide them boot camp. Let's start with the knowledge and access to the information first for the women startup founders or aspiring women who like to be part of this. And we have been doing a lot. Hand on heart, MAFCAP alone. I personally have been championing this since the day that I actually be with MAFCAP. We talk nothing about DEI. We're even very concerned of a procurement that we made at work, knowing that whether we actually have all these DEI elements. I think it has to start from first the policy of the country as well as the policy of the company or the organization that we represent. Current policy, it's there, but we want to be able to actually push the agenda further. More awareness need to be created it has to be put somewhere. The policy has to be like, I love the fact that SC has said that like 30%, but that is actually corporate. What happened to all the SME and startups? I mean, it's quite clear 30% representation. Even so, personally, 30% is not enough. I hope it's more, but be mindful that why DEI is very important. It will provide you different lenses, and different lenses matter. Yeah.
Yes, they absolutely do, and 50% at least for parity. Now, moving along a little bit deeper into a final discussion area, Amy. So how do you feel women entrepreneurs' access to finance can be improved via perhaps complementary government schemes? I'm talking about grants, guaranteed loans, and have you seen anything in our local landscape recently that has been encouraging?
Okay, first, I think recently I was reading on the news report, Kementerian Wanita, they actually been doing a lot of effort in helping the women entrepreneurs. I mean, as much as we are championing DEI, that again, it has to be based by merit. I mean, even that is actually being fair and just, right, by merit. So what I'm saying that in MEFCAP itself, we have actually started looking into this very seriously, and it's actually one of our strong governance in ESG policy to make sure that we help that 1% and increase the numbers. We have backed more than 30 women entrepreneurs. I mean, there's a lot of grant available. I think SME has a specific grant for women, and MDEC and even Cradle. There's a lot of funding agencies, government funding agencies out there that they will be able to reach out. I mean, the problem is, where do they go and how do they reach out? That is something that, we at MEFCAP would like to champion and to create further awareness. I mean, there's a lot of funding, but it also comes with a lot of restriction, requirements, and a lot more on our side as well as women, that we have to stop that imposter syndrome. Just go out there, seek for help and seek for advice. There's a lot of platform available for women. I mean, we have Lean In, we have Lean In Malaysia, we have a lot of organizations that will support our women entrepreneurs.
Yeah, sure. And if I could get your comment on one last area, Amy, what about the opportunity for women becoming a force for inclusive wealth creation and development? Because it goes beyond just the individual women. Women, of course, are connected to not just their families, but on their communities, particularly in the more between the urban-rural divide. So the impact is actually immeasurable, right?
Yeah. Again, excluding women out of this technology, digital technology will cost the world 1.5 trillion by 2025. But interestingly, if I may add a little bit more data, in Malaysia, according to this interesting report recently, Malaysia Labour Force Survey 2018, 60.2% women gave reason on why they are actually not in labor force because of child and elderly care. So this is, for me, a national issue. Do we have enough talent? Yes, we do. But what's stopping them, especially women, because child and elderly care? 60.2% says it's because of child and elderly care. So they give that reason. So excluding them, not having them in the labor force will lead to a huge gap on this DEI. And us as a government, what do we do given the fact that by 2056, we are going to be super age society. 20% of our population will be above 60. So usually woman is the one who will take the role as a caretaker. So what do we do as, how do we change the policy? How do we actually address all this issue using, tools and technology? So I love what Care Concierge is doing. And I also love what Kiddo Care is doing. They are both, up and coming startups in Malaysia. We hope by introducing more startups that focusing on care economy will help us to close this gender gap as soon as possible, maybe. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy, for sharing those extremely concise insights. That was Nur Amy Ismail, Chief Operating Officer with MEFCAP. We take a quick break now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Niaga Spotlight.
kegemilangan kita.
Really a one Malaysia team.
Kita impikan kejayaan baru.
Achievement untuk pasukan kebangsaan.
Mood Faiz Subri.
Dan terus memberikan inspirasi oleh para wira kita untuk generasi depan. Demi negaraku, raikannya bersama di saluran 100. Percuma untuk semua pelanggan.
Lain macam
Keadaan adik tengah macam ini, adik masih sempat make up tu yang abang.
Nabila tahu tak?
Ya.
Alamak, saya pun masalah jugalah.
Alamak.
Siap. Kalau I tak ada nanti, you ingat I lagi tak?
I tak janji. Cik
Bersama artis jemputan Atika Suhaimi dalam sepatu reunion live di Astro Warna dan Astro Go.
Malaysia's forests are more than just a habitat. They're how our planet breathes and stays healthy. Our forests are also home to over 30 million species of plants and animals and diverse native communities. Join us at the Astro Memperkasa Run, Taman Wetland Putrajaya on 24th September. Help protect our forests and open minds towards a sustainable future.
Jelajah jiwa SME akan bergerak seterusnya ke Johor. Pelbagai aktiviti menanti anda. Bengkel TikTok Shop Malaysia dan Unify Business. Perkongsian ilmu oleh Popcorn dan Bos Ijad. Sesi pitching saya jual dan banyak lagi. Jumpa anda di JB 2 dan 3 September ini. Dibawakan oleh penaja utama Jelajah Jiwa SME. Unify Business. Masa depan anda kini.
Welcome back to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tehmina Kaoosji. So this week on Future Affairs, we explore the topic of digital banking in Malaysia. Now, around 20% of the world's 250 digital banks are in the Asia-Pacific region. Bank Negara Malaysia BNM also recently announced Malaysia's first 5 digital banking licenses to some of the leading fintech technology and finance industry players, which will be operational by 2024. Few short months away. Now, these digital challengers with innovative business models are expected to enhance the depth and breadth of banking products and services offered to Malaysian society. Matthew Fernandes, immediate former committee member with the Fintech Association of Malaysia, FAOM, and Chief Operating Officer with Microleap, joins us now to discuss digital banking in Malaysia and what exactly the near future holds. Matthew, thanks so much for making time. How are you doing today?
Good. Selamat Hari Merdeka.
Wonderful.
We're happy to be here.
Thank you so much for the wishes. So, Matthew, let's get started off by talking about post-pandemic, of course. What has been observed is that huge acceleration in adoption of digital finance. So, it's gone up by about 74%. And how can this be expanded via digital banking models?
Yep. I think the good thing about, it's a great question. I think the good thing is with the digital banking space, the smartphone adoption as well as internet penetration has gone up from using MCMC's figures from 2017, 2018 to now, from 74% and 87% right up to over 95%, 97, 98% at the moment. So that, I think, has been spurred after from pandemic to now. And I think after that, it's now with the digital banking players coming in, already we have our current digital banking, our current P2P players already like ourselves in this space. So we're looking forward to actually working with these digital banking players and spurring their growth as well.
Absolutely. But at the same time, though, just your thoughts, your 2 cents on how ready we are for digitalization itself and to be doing all processes from start to finish online, not having to walk into a physical location to do any of the documentation.
Yes, exactly. I think it's good if we can continue having what the regulators are currently doing, which is getting the SC players as well as Bank Negara players to work together. The ITACAT is one example where they're trying to get the social financing for both digital and traditional banking guys to work with players like us, Mesin Kira, Global SciTech. So, it's because again, if you can work with the people on the ground right now, then it make your adoption, the trust for these guys much easier. Because at this point in time, there'll always be not so much a distrust or mistrust, but more the fact that people are unaware how digital banking is going to work. And, it's good to work with players that are already on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, though, those very positive figures of an estimated 74% of us already using digital financial services, that's pointing to a larger framework, right?
Yep, exactly. I think we are looking at, I think after the digital banking players come in, then you've got 5 strong five strong players, as well as these government initiatives like ITECAT and government agency initiatives like Islamic Digital Economy from MDEC, ITECAT, and all coming together.
Yes, exactly. And that also speaks to having the diversified financial landscape to meet the Malaysian consumer market demand, those which are Sharia compliant as well as traditional. Now, let's look at the estimated 55%, Matthew, of Malaysia's adult population, which is either underbanked or unbanked. So how can digital banking help to overcome some of the challenges for financial inclusion, looking at different demographics? We don't only want it to be hyper-concentrated within urban areas, right?
Exactly. I think if everyone has the Klang Valley bias, if I can call it that.
Sure.
Because
I think that's well said.
Yeah, everyone just keeps looking. I mean, granted, most of us are based here, but it's good if they can start looking towards the East Malaysia, for example, Sabah, Sarawak, which even ourselves we're looking to grow there. And I think it's if hopefully the digital banking players are also having more of an association kind of viewpoint rather than the silo viewpoint of only looking at, again, the peninsula / urban areas. Because even the likes of Perlis or our rural Johor, Malacca, I mean, all these places also needs, as much digital solutions, as many digital solution providers as possible. We have this DFS space, digital financing space needs to grow as much so that the outreach can meet the demand of everyone versus only let's rightly pointed out, that 55%.
That's right. And let's humanize it a little bit, particularly looking at MicroLeap's experience, Matthew. If you could share with us perhaps a story or something that's really spoken to the fact that ensuring digital finance reaches particularly micro SMEs and entrepreneurs on a very timely basis is what can ensure they get upscaled.
Yes, that's a great point. Because another clear example is this goat and chicken farmer from Kuala Pilah that has been on our platform and has grown with us over these last 2 years.
Right.
Slowly came at only 25,000 ask, and then later on, and also was funded. The whole process took about 2 weeks.
Only 2 weeks.
Only 2 weeks.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but of course the caveat is that he's very responsive, a very responsible MSME as well. So when we call him to answer some questions, or we call him you can please log in and accept the terms and conditions, he actually does it. Versus, or even the basic debt management accounting training that we provide for free, English PM, because they need to pass it before they get the financing. So even that also he's responsive. So that's why it's fast. Because sometimes when they take their own sweet time, and they don't respond back to us, then it might take 2 to 4 weeks. But he's been very good. I think it's a clear example for me because he went from 25,000. Just growing within Seremban, Klang Valley, and a bit of Johor, and now he's looking at Sabah, Sarawak, Indonesia on that side because they really like. I mean, basically they're happy with his his production and his his farming methods, etc. And that was something which we were quite proud of because
the access to finance played such a big role, right? Yeah. So from there, moving along, Matthew. Now, will the competitive landscape of the Malaysian banking sector be altered or enhanced by the advent of our 5 new digital finance players? What measures can be taken to ensure a sort of a peaceful coexistence?
Yeah. Exactly, it's true. They need to coexist no matter what. And I think you'll always have people who prefer the traditional banking routes. I mean, especially if it's convenient for them. Again, mainly would be urban areas, of course. But I would hope that they just like how the 2 regulators, which I applaud their efforts to getting our players working together. Because again, if there's no point reinventing the wheel. But at least having the digital banking players working together, traditional banking players, is a must. I mean, we have enough resources, and we should be, kind of going forward, because, SC was the first regulator to regulate the digital P2P space, digital registered market operators, and, other countries took the lead after. So I hope that even for digital banking, maybe when we may not be the first, but hopefully we will take strides to expedite and get these guys the integration and the adoption to be taken off straight away.
Yeah.
Versus moving goalposts, and then these guys, the longer they take to operationalize and the longer they take to work with people like us who are already on the ground, then it's just going to drag on forever, and hopefully not forever.
Yeah, so 2024 is also only 3 short months away.
Exactly.
Now, also there is, of course, a cap of 3 billion ringgit during the foundational phase, especially when it comes to the digital bank's assets. Now, do you feel that the regulatory restrictions of BNM's licensing framework are prudent, or are they pointing towards perhaps more levy, more room?
I feel it's prudent for now. It's just that, but there also has to have a line. There has to be a point where the goalpost, again, is not moved, and then everybody can start working towards getting everything ready, getting everything live. And if and when there will be any measures to change the frameworks, then at that point in time, maybe in a periodical phase, maybe in 2 to 3 years' time, something like that. It has to be, I would say, a baseline first, and then maybe at a later time, maybe look if there's a need for, only if there's a need, then only update their frameworks and thresholds.
Absolutely. So we've spoken briefly about why some customers might be still more interested in traditional banking models. Matthew, what about digital banks? How can they overcome some common issues of skepticism and lack of trust, particularly with those who are unbanked or even underbanked, and they might just be introduced to financial services in a digital mode?
Yeah, I think the main thing there is, again, the strategic partnerships. I think that's the key. If these guys work with players like us who are already on the ground, then the adoption will be so much faster. Because it's, we've already basically taken the initial hits, I would say. Because, even us under a different regulator, under Ministry of Finance, even that also, our regulators are thankfully now realizing this and trying to get the word out there that, hey, these are regulated entities, etc., etc. So, to build the trust. Even in Indonesia, from the fintech players I know there, that's what the regulators over there are doing. They're literally on the ground, going to rural areas, telling that these are the people you can trust. So if they do the same thing for the digital banking guys as well as how SC is doing it for us, I think that would be great. Because that, you can't beat, like, say, roadshow in the heart of KK, for example, or something along that line, where people know what these guys are all about. And also, of course, again, if you work with players that are already on the ground, then people already know us, they trust us, then obviously they'll just go, oh, if Microleap or whichever company is regulated entities are already working with you, then, oh, wait a minute, you're actually from this particular bank that I'm already a banking customer of.
Sure.
Then, yeah, that's how they can help to overcome the I would say, the initial skepticism.
Absolutely. Yeah. Matthew, thank you so much for making time to paint us that really bright picture of the digital banking landscape in Malaysia. That was Matthew Fernandes, former committee member, Fintech Association of Malaysia, FAOM, and COO with Microleap. Well, that's all we have time for today on Niaga Spotlight. We'll see you again next Friday with more business analysis and insights. I'm Tehmina Kaoosji signing off. See you then.